Hindsight, I would have started like 15 years ago, but I probably wouldn't have been ready. Back to my desk in Manhattan and just bawling my eyes out. Just 5 to 6 days out of a 365-day year. Wellness space is super saturated. There's 1,000,001 different trips, retreats, immersions, however you want to call it, you can go to nowadays, which is great. Find the answers that you may be seeking. It's fucking scary. But now I've built a business, 3 cities, and countless restarts. Somewhere between a 5K and ad week invite, I realized we're all just trying. This is Just Trying by Catherine. This is a follow-up video on my last upload on why I've been going back to Mount Shasta the past 3 years. And I thought about 7 questions and concerns I had before I even went on my very first retreat in 2023. The reason I want to do this is because I feel like the wellness space is super saturated. There's 1,000,001 different trips, retreats, immersions, however you want to call it, you can go to nowadays, which is great. They're not all created equal, and I feel like discernment is so key in asking the right questions, and you really have to follow your own specific journey and trust yourself in finding the right one for you in your path, because we're all so different. So I hope one of these 7 questions addresses some of your concerns. I had these 2 before I even went on my very first one, so I think it's always useful to get these reflections, and maybe you're thinking about going and not sure, so hopefully one of these helps you out. Number 1, safety and comfort. The concern is, will I feel safe? Know anyone? Will it feel inclusive or intimidating? The specific retreat I've been going back to for 3 years now does a fantastic job of creating the space as a group even before we all physically show up to the retreat. And they do this by creating WhatsApp group chats so everyone can introduce themselves before the trips. They create an Excel sheet where everyone can share logistic information and coordinate if they want, because everyone does come from all over the world. They give you a lot of resources on Mount Shasta itself for this specific retreat. You can apply any of this to any trip that you're planning on going to, but this group specifically gives us logistics information on the town itself, hotels, Airbnbs, and any of the car rentals, airports, all of that stuff, which is great. Now, as far as inclusivity, I'll touch on this with my other questions down the line, but super welcoming. I got really lucky with this group, and overall, I think everyone wants to be a part of a community, so automatically everyone has that kindred spirit and intentionality, which is wonderful for starting a brand new experience together. Number 2, cost and value. The concern here is it worth the money? What if I invest and don't get the transformation I'm hoping for? So this one's great because we low-key have that misconception and wish, if only, right? That, oh, if I go on this trip, if I do this, fill in the blank, poof, life is magically gonna be perfect. And we all know perfection does not exist. The healing journey is never ending, certainly not linear. My very first retreat, I just cried my eyes out. I never even allowed myself to cry, period. I was just working 24/7, nonstop. I didn't know what feelings were. That sounds harsh and funny at the same time, but I straight up just bawled and bawled and bawled. It was just like an opening, that very first retreat. And seeing myself for the first time. There's no quick fixes. I go to this retreat over and over again because it's given me tools that I can take home with me, but the density of life always comes back. So I think you also have to be real with yourself and have the right expectation that you're going to get the medicine that you need for that time and that you're ready for. And everyone has such a different journey, so give yourself grace. As far as the cost and value, some people don't bat an eyelash buying tech gadgets. Some people love handbags. Some people like trips, any trips around the world, it's all wonderful. We all have our thing that we invest in without questioning it. And I think that in itself says a lot. I say this because it's a self-investment and it's a big one, but the perception of value is up to you to answer, because if we don't deem it valuable, then we're going to convince ourselves that it's not valuable, right? And we'll find reasons. But if it's important enough to you, you will receive it as valuable, if that makes sense. Number 3, time, commitment, and guilt. The concern is, can I take time away from work, family, kids, responsibilities in general? The question, I feel like only you can also answer this. Of course, work situations are different and we all have different rules that apply to vacation days. That specifically with work-related time off, it's again ties into the previous question. It's up to you to deem it valuable enough that you will want to take some of your vacation days and apply it for a trip like this. The group that I did last year's immersion with, I think we had 3 or 4 moms that joined the group, and every situation is different. Some moms, I believe, rented Airbnbs and brought their family with and made a trip out of it. And while they would go through the retreat flow day to day, the family members, friends, husbands would take care of the babies, kids that they brought. And it's a mountain town, so it's fun to explore. There's fun lakes. It's a very family-friendly town. The guilt that could creep in, which is very normal. I always just think this is actually just 5 to 6 days out of a 365-day year, and in hindsight it's such a little amount of time, but it gives so much back. And this little thing gives me an armor that lasts beyond the year. If you think about the return that you're getting, the ROI you're getting, return of investment, for me it goes beyond the year, and it's still giving so much to me day after day, years after, 3 years later. So it's really up to you to decide and commit. And if there's the internal pull, I think it's worth exploring. Number 4, not knowing what to expect. The concern here is, what if I'm not spiritual enough, advanced enough? Will I be judged if I cry? What if I don't know how to meditate? What if I don't do yoga? I heard someone say that healing is never ending. We're always evolving, and we're always a novice at something. And I think it applies to this concern. I think one of the girls I carpooled with on the very first retreat was saying she was so glad she did it because she wasn't sure if she wasn't advanced enough to be a part of it. And I think that's a big misconception, because it truly is not linear, and we really are always going to be new and novices at another thing. And I think you have to look at the whole picture from a very grounded, humble lens, and keep that in your heart as your baseline coming into it. And you just have to be open and surrender to the process and allow your own biases, judgments. They're welcome, but they don't need to stay. I think openness is very important. No one's going to judge you if you're crying. In fact, everyone cries, laughs. People go through all emotions, and people come from every type of background. And this goes with life, not just retreats or trips in general. We all come from many different stories. We all have a story. Some people have never stepped into a meditation space, never experienced yoga. And honestly, it's all welcome. What I love about it the most is that everyone comes from such diverse backgrounds, stories, and it's all supported and welcomed. And no one is making you do anything. You can hold your own sovereignty throughout the whole thing. And yeah, full surrender, full flow. Just have to trust yourself. Trust that there's something in you wanting to do this, and you have to trust that you will make the right choices throughout the process. And no one's expecting you to be anything other than just yourself as you are. It sounds simple enough, right? But it really is that at the end of the day. Number 5, what if the group dynamic feels off or cliquey? The concern is, what if I feel awkward? So, again, I think surrender and flow comes to mind with this specific concern. You aren't going to know most people. If you're lucky, maybe you know 1 or 2 with these types of trips or retreats. But surrender comes to mind again, because you just have to allow for everyone to have their own experience. You have to allow for yourself to have your own experience. And with this, you have to know that everyone is literally going to go on their own journey within the journey. And it brings up so many emotions for people. So you have to just really be open and know overall, again, I can't say it enough, there's this innate kinship already, automatic bond that ties everyone together, because yes, everyone comes from many different backgrounds, but everyone's showing up for the same reason, and it's really just to remember, and you're getting to remember together. So that creates an unknown bond, whether you know it or not. And I've found personally that there is no click, there is no awkwardness. You may have those initial thoughts, but you sure forget about it by day one, you know? Everyone hugs each other. The moment that you arrive, there's an immediate recognition. I can tell you that from my personal experience. And everyone really is in it together while they're doing what's best for them within the journey within the journey. All right, so let's get into number 6, integration. What happens after this wonderful trip? What happens to your peace, sense of peace that you had for 5-6 days? I think what's great with the group I've gone with the past 3 years is that there are integration calls after the trip, which really helps, and there's always support within the group chat, and you've created a bond. So if you're near each other, you find ways to connect in different cities, or if someone's taking a trip close to someone, that's always great to keep those relationships going. I think this is a big one. I remember my very first retreat. I had struggled after that very first one, because I had unpacked so many emotions, and I didn't know what to do after I ripped this Band-Aid, and it was years worth of trauma and feelings I didn't even know I had, and I let it out, and I was like a newborn baby. I was vulnerable. I felt very raw, sensitive, and I remember going back to my desk in Manhattan and just bawling my eyes out. I had a fashion job, and then here I was back from this trip and just crying, trying to hide it, because I just felt so raw. And I didn't really know that first year how to maintain that peace the way I do now. You know, now in hindsight, after doing 3 of those trips, I know the journey I'm on now is to keep that devotion to that altar. And the altar it's us. It's that feeling. It's what you've built together. It's knowing that you can always tune back into that whenever you need, when you're back home, and you can always access it energetically by dropping in. I've learned so many tools, but I think it's so important to know that you also have to do the work yourself after. You're given the tools, but it's up to you to fan the flame, and that flame is your remembrance. And you know, just like working out, you also have to choose to keep your own journey going. No one's going to do it for you. So the integration and the peace, you know, density is always all around us. Conflict doesn't disappear automatically in our lives. So many different things are always coming at us all at once. So it is up to us ultimately to keep that journey going after the trip, and to apply the tools that we've learned in our daily lives. It's so important. The last concern, number 7, is what about my physical and emotional needs? So nutrition and what comes up during the trip emotionally. That's the last concern I was reflecting on. And the number one thing I love for the trips I've been taking is that we have a very reverent chef, Chef Ray, who is based in Mount Shasta, and she has such a kinship with all the ingredients that she uses, and her food is primarily vegetarian, vegan. She kind of is a magician in that way, that she can address all sorts of dietary needs. But overall, I'm a meat eater, and I don't miss eating meat whatsoever whenever I'm on these trips, because my God, her sauces that she whips up, she teaches online, I believe, how to make these magic sauces that are so good. For all her recipes, you don't have to worry about food, honestly. The whole time, food's included in the cost. And I started going on the trips, and I used to look at it as like, okay, this is my few days to reset my body and really eat what's so good for my body inside and out. And I've slowly adapted those recipes from the trip 3 years later, and that's another lifelong journey in itself, is nutrition and our relationship to it. You know, no one's forcing you to eat vegetarian, vegan by any means. People drive into town every morning. There's wonderful restaurants and cafes. You can still get your coffee run in. You can still order food if you want. But again, that relationship with food was another one that was deep for me within the journey. And learning the correlation between what we're putting inside our bodies and how that relates to being a clearer receiver of information. So by that I mean that the cleaner I've found personally, the cleaner I've eaten, and the more I'm taking care of myself from the inside out, the more I realize that I can hear my thoughts better. I can feel with more clarity. I can basically tune in, you know, and you can use the metaphors of like television. Let's say Wi-Fi is not working well. You have to fine tune to get a clearer channel. So nutrition is a whole deep dive, and everyone has their own journeys with that as well. And for some people, it's very hard to even eat vegan, vegetarian, eat no meat for a few days. I've seen people who are like big meat eaters fight it in the beginning and then taste race food, and then they forget all about it, you know. And we always have free will, so it's like, listen, it's supposed to be joyful, all of it. You're investing money, you've flown out, there's a chef there who is so sweet and cooks delicious food, but you also have free will. That's a whole journey on its own right there. That's a whole nother deep dive, because there's a lot of different journeys around food and nutrition and well-being in that particular area. So You also just really have to remember that you're honoring yourself, and you get to choose. Again, you get to choose how you want to connect with food while you're on this trip. And no one's forced to do anything. You're like, I mean, I wish I had Chef Ray 24/7, because then I wouldn't have to worry about full nutrition and getting what my body really wants and is good for it 365 days of the year. But if I can get a little smidget of that 5 to 6 days out of the year, then it's perfect. The last concern is a huge one, and it's the emotional needs. And I'm just going to hammer that point of there's always a journey within the journey. It's like a roller coaster ride, and again, surrender and flow over and over again, baby. Those 2 words. Because you're going to go through your own emotional roller coaster, and it's always going to be different. There's plenty of times where you could just sit and journal or have a nice bath. There's plenty of time for yourself. It's not like 24/7 every day of the retreat. You're like, we gotta work on our feelings together, everyone, nonstop. I love that there's such a flow and ease, and there's this like alchemy, and they truly listen to first the group frequency, and also they honor what people need throughout the day. Some people stay in their cabins and have a day to themselves, and some skip breakfast and sleep in, and some people sleep earlier at night. Like, you're having your own wonderful journey within the journey, and you have to trust that you are receiving exactly what you're needing for that very moment. Just full trust. These 7 questions I've touched on them very lightly, and it's because if you are somehow watching this, you may have looked into retreats, may have looked into trips, solo trips, maybe you've already dabbled into all of this. I think it's so important to not be intimidated by our doubts, our questions, our concerns, which are all so natural. In fact, you should want to ask all of these questions before going on any trips. You should want to tune in to the organization, the people that are holding the space. You should want to actively participate in something that you are choosing to invest time, money on. It is a big investment, period. And there's so many trips, there's so many retreats. There's a retreat for everyone these days. Don't be intimidated by the language, your doubts. Do the research, ask the questions. You should want to talk to the people organizing it, and if you have that chance where they give you discovery calls to ask questions and feel into what this is going to be, oh my God, take it. Talk to them. Have the conversations before the trip so that you can be locked in and come in knowing that, okay, I had these doubts, I had all these anxiety. They're still there, I see them, but I feel a little better and I'm in a more grounded place so I can surrender to this experience and trust that I'm going to have the journey that I'm meant to, you know? And you may have well past the 7 questions I touched on here, and I'm just here to encourage you to find the answers that you may be seeking. And a lot of times that journey begins with that very scary, because it's, excuse my French, it's fucking scary. It's mortifying to say yes to things we're not used to that are so out of the box in that moment until you have them. Here's me chilling, sitting back now talking about this 3 years later, but let me tell you, that first year was rough. But now I've built a business. That couldn't have happened without me going on that very first trip. And I didn't start my business until 2 years later. That's another thing. A lot of things that you experience and may not understand, they'll make sense years later. For me, that was creating my business. And just do it, man. Don't hesitate. The number one thing that I would leave this video off with is just do it. Don't hesitate. I wish now, in hindsight, I would have started like 15 years ago, but I probably wouldn't have been ready. So trust yourself. The time's always right, and the time is always right now for you. So only you can answer these things. Have a good day. If you're liking any of my videos, it helps a lot to encourage your girl to keep making more by commenting, liking, subscribing. Tell a friend who can receive this. And yeah, enjoy your day.